Hello, good evening. This is Dilip Purohit, uh, and let me introduce myself. I'm having around 26 years experience in IT industry, and have played a different roles. I had been a database administrator, a data warehouse consultant. I was a project manager, and now currently I'm an enterprise architect working for Capgemini. I'm with Capgemini for around 16 years now. Uh, and as an architect, I need to interact with clients and understand their requirements. Uh, and that's where I'm using design thinking. I have a certification from IDEO, uh, who is the owner of design thinking concepts in insights for innovation. And as far as my uh, certifications are concerned, I have done various certifications in technology and project management. So I have certification. Uh, I'm a certified Azure solution architect, and I have done PMP from PMI. Uh, just recently, I have completed PG diploma in artificial intelligence and machine learning from IIT Bangalore, and I am AIML enthusiastic. So I'm getting into, as far as Capgemini is concerned, I'm getting into the projects where we are using artificial intelligence and machine learning. So let's get back to design thinking. And here is the agenda for our today's session. So today we are going to cover what is design thinking, and the process itself, uh, some of the principles, important principles in uh, which are used as part of design thinking. How do you empathize with the users? How do you generate ideas? And what is the idea generation process? And then we are also going to look at how the corporates generate those ideas. And then we are also going to look at some of the very interesting examples of how the people have came up with innovative ideas and implemented them. So as far as design thinking is concerned, design thinking is evangelized by IDEO. IDEO is founded by David Kelly way back in 1990s. Uh, IDEO is part of Stanford University's DE School. So, as far as design thinking is concerned, design thinking is an approach where you uh, uh, try to solve your design problem by understanding users' unmet needs and developing insights to solve those needs. Okay. So, understanding user unmet need is something which is central to design thinking. And as we go into our session, you'll know how it is done. Now, as far as your college projects are concerned, because I believe most of the audience today for this particular session are students, so I would encourage you to implement the design thinking principles. We will go through this session, but you can also refer to uh, uh, the articles, and there are trainings which are hosted by IDEO. You can go through those trainings, and I would encourage you to implement the design thinking principles to your college projects. On the right, you can see the design thinking as I see it. Okay, if so, this is my view of how the design thinking is structured. Of course, some of the terms here like inspiration, ideation, and implementations are from IDEO. And as part of the inspiration project process, you try to understand your user. You try to understand your user by observing them, by interviewing them, and actually experiencing their pains and challenges. Then there is an ideation process, using which uh, then you try, you ideate uh, based on what you understand as part of your observations, interviews, and the experience. And then, as part of the implementation, then you create prototypes, and you develop those prototypes, hand over those prototypes to your users, and get a feedback. Now, here the important concept in design thinking is fail early and fail safe. Because here you are going to work on the idea generation and create prototypes and provide those prototypes to your users and get early feedback. If there is any difference in perception um, between what the user want and need and what you have provided as part of your product or process, then um, you are getting early feedback in a process. Vis-a-vis, you are developing a full-fledged product or process, implementing it, and user coming back to you and telling you that this is not what the user is expecting. Um, in case of IT industry, we used to had this kind of problem, and now as far as even the IT industry is concerned, they are implementing design thinking a lot because it will help them uh, collate the user's requirement more effectively and get a user feedback early in the life cycle. So now the first step in the design thinking process is the empathizing with your users. And how do you do it? So, for example, in case of your projects, you have statement of purpose, which you write as part of your project objective. In case of corporates, they come across some problem and they have a intelligence which is collected from market, and they also have some ideas on what kind of business opportunities or what kind of challenges their existing users are facing. And so once that is collated, then you identify your users. And identification of users is something which is very, very important because then you would like to understand the users' unmet needs. And we are going to see that how we are going to do it. But identification of users is a very tricky process. For example, if you are developing a particular product in mechanical industry, then your users are not just the people who are going to use your product, but your users are the people who are going to service it, the people who are going to provide you with the uh, the parts, spare parts, and so these are some of the users which you need to identify. And then, as part of empathizing process, what you do is you try to understand their issues, challenges, pains, and the bad experiences. And this information is something which is very important when it comes to uh, understanding users' unmet needs. Uh, and how do you identify the issues and challenges and pains? Uh, there are techniques which are proposed by design thinking process. And those techniques are that you interview your users, you observe your users, and that is uh, not something which is done as part of requirement gathering many a times. The observation of your users uh, is something which is very important. By observing your users, you uh, look at the kind of difficulties they are facing, uh, the kind of expressions they are coming up with while using a particular product or a particular process, or the kind of issues which the users are experiencing. And I mean, so for example, when you go to a hospital and when you try to register yourself in a hospital, you know that in case of some hospital, it's a very, very painful process. You have to sit somewhere and then you're you're asked to wait for a long time, and then you need to fill in multiple forms, and then it's I mean it becomes an endless process. And then at the end what happens is then the user becomes irritated, they have a bad experience. So these are some of the things which are very, very important when you are collecting the issues, challenges, and pains from your users. And the third, which is very, very important when it comes to getting the user insights, is putting yourself in their shoes, which is actually empathizing. And I'll give you an example of putting yourself in their shoes. Uh, uh, for example, in case of home design, uh, there is a concept of home, and then there is a concept of space where you live. Homes are very different. So for example, in case of our agrarian society, if you go to rural India, their needs as far as their homes are concerned is very different from the needs of the people who stay in urban area. So what you do as a designer is actually you go and stay with them. uh, in case of your project where you are designing a device for visually impaired, you actually blindfold yourself and see what it feels to be a visually impaired. So these are some of the things which you do as a designer to get insights from your user. And then what is the output from all this exercise is an empathy map. Okay, an empathy map is a collection of user insights and requirements from user. Okay, now, when it comes to any design, these are some of the important design requirements. Okay, so you know that when it comes to design, the requirements are uh, that I mean there are user requirements in terms of what kind of features the users require. Then the user experience itself. So when it comes to process, we talked about the process of registering into a hospital, and the user getting a bad experience, or you're going to a government office and you're trying to do some work, and you're experiencing the way the things are done. So this is and so this user experience is something which is very important consideration for design. Serviceability is something which is very important. Okay. So when you start designing something, you need to also think of how the product or how a particular software, for example, is going to be serviced ultimately, whether it is serviceable. Um, the quality is something which needs to be there as part of your design. Environmental damage consideration is something which is very important in case of products. Um, in case of chemical industry or mechanical industry, um, you know that when it comes to the electronics, one of the big problems that we are facing nowadays is how do you dispose the batteries after their usage. So these are some of the considerations that you need um, to have in mind when you are actually designing your product. By considering all these aspects and many more, I would say, uh, I think you are looking at your design more holistically than just coming up with satisfying the user requirements and uh, the quality for a product. So now you have uh, listed your users, you know your users, you have interviewed them, observed them, you have lived their experience, and you have came up with the empathy map. The next step is to actually sit down and start working on your design ideas. And in case of design thinking, it's ideation process. And as part of ideation process, you uh, need to do what is called as divergent and convergent thinking. So, as part of divergent thinking, the input to divergent thinking is your user insights and requirements, which is your empathy map. And as part of divergent thinking, um, you start taking one requirement at a time, one insight at a time, and start coming up with ideas around it. So, for example, in case of a process, okay, if there are bad experiences, then you start coming up with the list of ideas uh, as to how you want to solve the bad experiences which are faced by your users. Ask why questions, which is very, very important in case of divergent thinking. Uh, you want to know as to why a particular user is experiencing bad experience, or why a particular user is facing a particular challenge. And then once you do that, you also need to think outside your box. Okay, don't think of obvious solutions. Think outside box. Come up with as much solutions as possible for each and every user insight and requirement that you have uh, uh, came up with as part of your empathy map. In case of divergent thinking, um, do not constrain your ideas. The ideas can be as wild as possible, as uh, as I would say, crazy as possible. But list down those ideas, because once you start thinking and once you start going through those ideas as part of your convergent thinking, it's possible that some of the ideas which you thought of as not implementable, not possible, will become suddenly possible after your ideation process. Now, so as part of your divergent thinking, you have listed down all those ideas, and you can see that have attached a picture here of post-its, and that's one of the things which we normally use as part of idea generation process, because it is very easy for our team members to write their own ideas on the post-its and paste it on a say a wooden board, or in some area, and then it is very easy for us to then select those ideas and then collate them in one place. So your idea pool can be a board with a number of post-its organized in maybe a sections, and then as part of your convergent thinking, then you start selecting one post-it at a time and discussing that idea collectively. Okay, and the you apply three filters when you are discussing those ideas, and those three filters are desirability, viability, and feasibility. Whether a particular idea is something which is desired by user, uh, whether it is that that particular idea is having a business viability, and whether it is technically and financially feasible to implement that idea. Okay, so as part of your convergent thinking, you start then applying these three filters and start coming up with infinite solutions from your idea pool. If you see the idea pool box, you can see that it's in two colors, because when it comes to your idea pool, you are going to select only few ideas from your idea pool and then park other ideas. Okay, you are not going to discard any idea, because it is possible that the idea which you have parked suddenly becomes very important once you start getting into the process further. Okay, you can see that there is a circular motion, circular, I would say, uh, exchanges between divergent thinking and convergent thinking, because as part of your convergent thinking you have started discussing uh, the idea one at a time, and then it's possible that somebody may came up with a idea where you need to again go back to divergent thinking, collect more ideas, and come to a convergent thinking to select few ideas from your updated idea pool. So that circular exchange of ideas is something which is very normal in case of idea generation. Now, as part of your convergent thinking, what is important is some kind of moderation, between moderation, because you would like to come up with a finite number of solutions for your prototypes. Okay, and that's where some moderation is something which is very important. You can see a very interesting statement by Tim Brown from his book Change by Design, uh, and that statement is all of us are smarter than any of us. So that is very relevant, and we are going to see what those all constitutes. So these are some of the ideation tips. We have seen how you do your convergent and divergent thinking, and so as part of that thinking process, these are some of the tips which I would like to give you. Provide equal opportunities to everyone to contribute ideas. So when you start getting into a group, now it's possible that one or two persons will come up with a number of ideas, and then you will see that the number of people are a silent spectator. They are just listening. Uh, Encourage them to speak. Encourage them to add to your idea pool. That is something which is very important uh, when you are working in these kind of groups for the innovative ideas, because those silent spectators, silent members will suddenly come up with idea which is really good, and because the only two people are speaking from your group, in a group of five people, the other three are just silent, they are just uh, listening to what these two people are saying. So give equal opportunity to everybody to contribute ideas, and you will see a radically different results. Use multidisciplinary group, which is very important. So in case of your college projects, for example, you can call your colleagues from other departments, or call your uh, colleagues from the other areas, and maybe you can call your juniors for ideation process, and you will see again very different, radically different results as far as the ideation process is concerned. There is a specific term called co-design used by IDEO for this kind of multidisciplinary group. The other example of multidisciplinary group is, say for example, you are developing a medical equipment, and in case of uh, ideation for development of that medical equipment, you would like to call the electronic engineers, the mechanical engineers, then the people who are doing going to select metallurgy. Then you need to call doctors who are going to use it. Then you would like to also call the people who are going to service that equipment. So that's how the multidisciplinary group is created, and uh, the important thing about multidisciplinary group is you will get a first-hand uh, uh, inputs from all those different people about your product, about the ideas which you are trying to promote, and they will it will end up in refining your ideas. Express ideas in different words. So which is very very important again, because normally we use the words which are known to us. For example, when it comes to fitness, uh, the the normal words are gym or cycling or swimming. But if you start expressing your ideas in different words, for example, you can say aerobics, or you can say yoga, then you will have a completely different perspective to your idea pool, and then it may lead to a very different type of product which is more appealing to your users. Um, of course, you need to carefully assess the pros and cons of ideas while converging. Uh, that is something there. And what are those pros and cons? The pros and cons are the constraints, and those constraints are of three type that we already discussed: the feasibility, desirability, and viability. Whether a particular idea is something which is uh, technically and financially feasible, uh, business wise is it viable, and whether that particular idea is something which is desired by your users. As part of your ideation process, we'll definitely encourage you to use the visual tools like sketches or Legos, or the decision trees or fishbone diagrams. Mind maps are many a times used as part of your ideation process, and they will help you in explaining your ideas more clearly uh, to other members of your multidisciplinary group. So now we'll look at how the ideas are generated by corporates. The idea generation by corporates is done many a times in a uh, in a typical way, I would say. So what do they do is they assess the environment. They so From their marketing intelligence and from their sales team, they have they know that this is something which the users are demanding nowadays in market, uh, or their competitor is coming up with another product which they can take into consideration and add features, or some new completely new technologies available into the market, and they would like to uh, you know they know that there are opportunities by using that technology. So they assess the environment in this way, and then they of course they need to consider the user demand and the business viability for those ideas, and then they come up with a new product which is uh, with a new features, with additional features maybe, or they use a technology which is there into the market, a new technology into the market, and they start wrapping around the user needs around that technology, and then they come up with their product. Um, but that there are many products which have failed into into the market previously, and the I mean many of those products uh, are having very advanced features, but the users just rejected those products. On the right, you can see a small um, graph and a matrix, and you can see that the matrix is around the offer and the users. So when the users and offers are existing users and existing offers, there are incremental changes. So what the corporates do is they add few features, and then they release it as a new product. If you go to electronic shop, and if you uh, uh, search for, or if you want to buy say a fridge or AC, you'll see there are multiple ACs or multiple fridge or washing machines from various vendors with different features, and that's how the companies come up with a new product line. Then there are existing offers, but there are new users, and then the corporates need to adopt those existing offers, and they market that offer to new users. Okay, and then of course when there are new users and new offers, and that's where the actual innovation comes into the picture. Okay, now here these are some of the real life design thinking projects which I would like to show you. And these projects are, you can see that, most of these projects are something to do with our rural uh, market or rural India. So the first project is transport pooling for farmers, where, so currently, that, in news, there is a lot of furor and news around farmers not able to transport their crop to market. So why not have some application using which we can kind of transport pool for market for farmers. That's one idea. The other is the refrigerated hand cart for fish sellers and ice cream sellers. Uh, you can use solar energy kind of setup, uh, but so that's just one option. There can be multiple options for uh, your design for refrigerated hand cart. Then sustainable bridges. Even today, many areas in our country are not accessible during monsoon season because of bridges, proper bridges. So, do you have some idea around how we can construct those bridges from locally available material? Try using design thinking. Water filters for rural population. Even today, there is no good potable water distribution in our rural area. There is no potable water distribution in our rural area. So, can we create some filtration system? There are filtration systems, but can we create some sustainable filtration system which can be constructed using the locally available material, which is affordable? So we don't want to construct a system which is in lakhs. A design thinking project. Now, how we do it in Capgemini? So in Capgemini, we have a very systematic process of coming up with innovative ideas. And so we have what is called as accelerated innovation exchange. It's a place where we get our client, and then it's a very nice place uh, where we get our client, and then we get our design thinkers and designers, and then they go through a very systematic uh, ideation process. So client exchange their problems with our designers, and then there are the interviews, exchange of views, uh, and then our designers then present uh, a possible design solutions to our client, and then the client also provide early feedback to our designers. So we have a very systematic process of coming up with these kind of innovative ideas. And the other things which we do in Capgemini is we have hackathons, we have innovation days, we have design thinking days, where a lot of ideation and idea generation takes place. Uh, so we have a very robust ecosystem within Capgemini for innovative idea generation. And so these are some of the innovative ideas which are uh, implemented by, I would say, a man on the street. You know, so in one idea, the milkman is giving milk to his user using very innovative process. We are having a COVID situation now, and you can see that it's a very innovative way of social distancing and at the same time doing their business. Then on the right you can see that they have constructed a very good washroom using uh, what discarded water tank. On your left you can see that there is a cart fill vendor, and he has converted his cart fill sorry his motorbike, uh, and attached his bike to cartwheel for a very easy transportation. He has also attached steering so that he can steer the cartwheel very easily, and he's also his family is also going along with him. So these are some of the innovation which people are doing day in and day out, and I take a lot of inspiration from these kind of innovations. Uh, these kind of things give very interesting ideas to me when it comes to uh, implementing my ideas in my projects, or when it comes to implementing ideas when it comes to my small farm outside Mumbai. Then this is another innovative idea. Uh, Again, this is a response to a COVID situation. Uh, a nice huts are constructed, transparent huts are constructed on the waterfront, where they have arranged tables. Normally, those huts are not there. The tables are arranged. People can just sit around and they can eat, and have a nice time. But because of COVID situation, this is the innovation that they have came up with, and so these are some of the innovative ideas which are really inspirational, and which really uh, provide a lot of food for thought when it comes to design process. So thank you so much for listening to me. You can see my coordinates here. My email ID is dilip.purohit at capgemini.com. If you have any questions outside this particular workshop, then you can reach out to me. Uh, or if you want me to support you, mentor you for your college projects, and if you want to implement design thinking as part of your college projects, then I can definitely help you in doing it. And I'm quite sure you will see very different results when it comes to your college projects. So uh, the let's go through the questions. What are the top skills to excel in the design field? This is a question from BN Sachin. And the skills which you require to excel in design field are the first very important skill is the listening skill. And it is said that the listening skill is something which is very hard to uh, it's a very hard skill to uh, uh, practice. Good listeners are good designers. So listening is something which is very important. The other skill that you need to garner is the interview skills. So when it comes to interviews, you need to be prepared with agenda. You need to first get in touch with your user, and then uh, you need to provide agenda to your user. One of the important thing in case of interviews is that you need to find a very comfortable space for interview process. There are few tips and techniques for conducting interviews, and you can search Google. But some of the tips are that you need to have agenda. You need to have comfortable space. And when it comes to interview, you need to first ground your user. Grounding the user is something which is very, very important uh, in case of interviewing your user. Uh, and that grounding process says that you need to have your user at a same page as you are. Okay. And the grounding process is, for example, you are meeting your user, uh, and then do not start interviewing. You do not start asking questions right away. You first have a coffee. Maybe you can have a nice chat. You can talk about their families. So, and in a process, your user gets comfortable with you, and then your user gets grounded. Okay, they start trusting you. They start being comfortable with you, and then you can start asking questions. So these are some of the things, skills which you need to garner as part of your uh, top skills in case of design field. How to apply design thinking in engineering mathematics? Is there any reference website to learn? It's from M. Ravi. I'm not sure. I don't know any reference website to learn. Um, but wherever there is a design, uh, it is supplemented by thinking. Okay, and I would say wherever there is a thinking, you need to supplement it by design. So in case of engineering mathematics, I'm not sure what kind of project you are looking at, but definitely you can, uh, go through the design thinking process and understand the important principles of design thinking, and try to use those principles as part of your design or model development in case of engineering mathematics. Yeah, so new opportunities in design thinking to combat present COVID-19 situation. It's from Minakshi, uh, and she's from Coimbatore. Thanks, Minakshi. And this is a very, very interesting situation today for us. Um, COVID-19 situation is opening up a lot many opportunities for design thinkers. I've already shown you one picture earlier when it comes to uh, the innovation uh, in the restaurant industry, where they have set up uh, the small transparent huts on the riverfront, where the people can go, uh, sit safely, have a nice meal, have a nice view, and at the same time, they are safe, and they are taking care of themselves. So there will be more opportunities and in design thinking to combat the current situation. Um, I can see a lot of opportunities in the process field. Because, for example, I'll give you a very simple example. Uh, when in Many people are getting paranoid when it comes to the visiting vendors to your societies, and the many societies, many uh, of them are not allowing any vendor to come in, and so here you can design a process. We have actually designed a process where what we are doing is we are asking that vendor to be in our society premise area, be at a safe distance from building so that the people don't get paranoid. But at the same time, we understood our the pain point of our uh, uh, building inhabitants. That is, they are looking out for safety. They are looking out for social distancing. So what we have done is we have asked them to send us their request on WhatsApp, and then as a return, we are sending them a token number. Okay, and then we are asking, so we are then calling, the people by token number and actually communicating to them, maybe, the calling them or sending them WhatsApp message whenever their turn comes. So that, when we are achieving social distancing, at the same time, we are achieving um objective that, people are getting, all the grocery and, whatever, things they want. And I'm quite sure in case of this kind of COVID-19 situation, there are many more such opportunities in terms of product development and process development where you can use design thinking very effectively. Then, yeah. Um, how a man designed himself to get good fruits in bad situation atmosphere who came as a child laborer. Um, it's from Narsimulu from Hyderabad. I'm not sure. I mean, I understood the the question, but I think what Narsimulu is trying to say is that he maybe he would like to distribute uh, some certain things to the child laborers, or he would like to avoid having the child laborers in their area. One of the thing is that when it comes to the child laborer, uh, we need to understand their pain points. Why there are child laborers, and that's where design thinking will come into the picture. We have laborers in our country because their mother and father is not able to earn consistently, and their earnings are not enough to support their families. And then the only thing which is available to them is to send their kids for work, and that's how we are getting child laborers. So I think child laborer issue is much deeper, much more challenging issue when it comes to the design thinking process. I think you need to get behind why a particular child is currently working. Of course, I mean, then you can understand their pain points or their challenges, and if possible, try to solve their challenges using the local NGOs or the other groups. I hope I have given you answer. Um, Convergent, and can you explain convergent and divergent ideas with examples? It's from Samuel Caesars uh, uh, from Coimbatore. So Samuel, when it comes to divergent thinking, uh, for example, you are developing a project for your college, and the development of project is say let's take a very simple example of interview your librarian, you interview your principal, understand what they think about the existing library setup, what kind of problems they are facing when it comes to managing the books and introducing new books. Then when it comes to your librarian, you can observe your librarian in action. You can go to library, sit there for a day, observe your librarian, observe what kind of pains they are facing when they are uh, uh, issuing a book, or whenever they are recording a particular book issue, and then you note down all these points as part of your empathy map. So your empathy map will include all the requirements from your librarian, from your principal of your college, then your lecturers, maybe the students. So these are some of the users which have just identified for your library management project, and then uh, you collect all the insights and requirements from all these users, and then as part of your divergent thinking, then you need to uh, take one requirement at a time, come up with the list of modules which you would like to develop, list of technologies which you would like to use as part of your project development, and then as part of your convergent process, you start collecting which modules are something which are, excuse me, are really required by users, or whether some of the modules are nice to have modules. So whether you would like to first concentrate on the modules which are very critical for library operation. So these are some of the decisions which you take as part of your convergent thinking process. When it comes to technologies, you then start thinking of which all technologies are available at your disposal. What is your budget for your project? And then you start coming up with alternatives. Start thinking about which technologies to use. Um, and if you think out of box, maybe you can come up with ideas which are completely different from the mainstream ideas which are, or the normal ideas which are implemented by the students. Uh, there is an interesting question by Kiran from Mumbai. Is it necessary to have a design education background to reach a higher position in this field? I would say, at least as far as my experience is concerned, uh, uh, if you go through the design thinking, uh, 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 the trainings on, if you go through the trainings on design thinking, or if you are able to attend the workshop in design thinking. So I conduct a workshop for many colleges uh, in and around Mumbai, and have conducted few workshops in Hyderabad. Uh, so the as far as the design education is concerned, you don't really require any design education. What you require is the knowledge of the principles, the design thinking principles, and then as a leader, you uh, organize multidisciplinary team as part of your project, and then you start your design thinking process. So and if you have any formal education in design, for example, In case of IITs, there is masters in design. Well, then you are a master. Then I think the as far as the design thinking is concerned, I'm quite sure it is covered as part of MDes curriculum. How to implement this technique? What tools are required? And this is Spurti from Kanpur. Spurti, so we have already looked at some of the tools which you can use as part of your ideation process. And those tools are, you can use sketches, you can use Legos, you can use, the diagrams, you can use mind maps or fishbone diagrams, decision trees. So there are various graphical techniques available which you can use as part of ideation process. In case of prototyping, the techniques are very wide. So, in case of auto industry, they use the clay models. In case of IT industry, we use wireframes for application designing. Sorry, the prototyping of application design. So these are some of the techniques which you can use as part of the design thinking process. But remember that the tools are enabler. What is important is and even what is hardest is getting insights from your users, and that is the most important thing to do in case of design thinking. Is design thinking only for designers? It's from Srinivas from Amalapuram. So Srinivas, no, I mean design thinking is not for designers. I mean, in case of your normal day-to-day life, you can use design thinking principles. For example, I am using design thinking to model my financial portfolio. Um, I am using design thinking to come up with the roofing ideas for my small farm. So design thinking is not only for designers. Of course, when it comes to the professional designers, they are professional with a professional background, degrees and masters and doctorates in designs. Those are the experts in design. But if you understand the uh, principles of design thinking, I'm quite sure you can start implementing those principles and you can come up with a very good designs. And we'll take last question and we'll end this session. What is the difference between idea and ideation? It is from Srinivasa Rao from Vijayawada. So using ideation, you come up with ideas. So as part of your ideation, you go through a divergent and convergent thinking process. In the divergent thinking process, again, you come up with as many ideas as possible. As part of your convergent thinking process, you select the appropriate ideas based on the viability, feasibility, and desirability of those ideas and incorporate those ideas as part of your design. So, again, thank you so much for uh, listening to me, and I hope you can implement design thinking as part of your project projects. Again, you can reach out to me, and I'll be there to help. Stay safe and take care. Thank you. Bye bye.